So when the president turns to you, Gary, and says, how can we possibly keep this sort of addition to jobs going at this point in the cycle, what do you tell him?
Well, David, look, I think there's a fairly easy answer here. Remember, in our first 50 days, today, by the way, is our 50-day halftime. 7 weeks ago today was inauguration. In the first 50 days here, we've had enormous amount of CEO traffic into the White House. We've had many big announcements from CEOs, whether it be the automobile manufacturers or Intel. You've seen many of the announcements about people building manufacturing back in the United States, bringing manufacturing back to the United States. Remember, those jobs are not in these numbers. Those jobs will come in the future. They'll come 3, 6, 12 months from now. So we think there's enormous demand for American workers built in the system just in what we're seeing from the CEOs that are coming into the White House. And so that is going to naturally grow demand for workers. Those workers will grow demand for other workers, and there'll be an enormous trickle down and trickle up in that. So we're very excited about the job prospects in America.
So as you say, you've had the benefit now of talking with all these CEOs. You've got at least a good part of your team together. You've got Steve Mnuchin over at Treasury. You've got various people in place. So based on that and putting together a budget, which you're doing right now, what sort of growth projections are you building in?
Well, look, we're very optimistic on growth. But the one thing we're going to do in the White House is we're going to set very realistic growth projections. We've actually looked back at all the prior administrations in their beginning and saw what they put out for GDP forecasts at the beginning of their administrations, and none of them got close to meeting their GDP projections. We're actually going to put out GDP projections that we think we can not only meet, we think we're going to beat. We would rather under-promise and over-deliver here than over-promise, because we think it's relatively easy to do in the part of the cycle we're in, and seeing the activity that we've seen from all the CEOs that we've engaged with, and the fact that we're going to be rolling back regulation, we're going to be bringing out new tax policies in the United States, we're very optimistic about the GDP growth that we think is coming.
Now, it's certainly what I learned at the Walt Disney Company. You want to underpromise and overdeliver when it comes to budgets. But to get a little more specific, if you look at the projections that are out there right now for GDP growth for this year, it's something in the low twos range, up to 2.3, 2.4. Will you expect something materially better than that?
Well, remember, we're already in the middle of this year. So in moving the 2.3 or 2.4 projection much higher, it's going to be tough to move that dramatically higher this year. But yes, we would like to outperform the 2.3 or 2.4 prediction for this year. But as we grow over the next year or two, we think that we can substantially improve on that number as we get tax reform done in the second half of this year, as we continue to get the jobs created from the companies that have committed job growth to us in the future. We think growing the GDP forward is going to be relatively in line with our projections. And our projections, as I said, they're cautiously optimistic, and we think we can outperform them. So yes, we will continue to see growth, but remember, this year is somewhat started to be baked in, but we will outperform where some of the projections are.